If you took this vehicle to the shop and had them do it, it's gonna cost you at least $500. Fords, I don't work on a lot of those. Yeah, somebody drop a comment. Yeah, why Fords are great. In 2024, the wind. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I have the Chevrolet in the shop. We're gonna do some work on it, and I'm gonna show you how to check the wheel bearings on a vehicle. This isn't gonna just apply to Chevrolets, it's gonna pretty much apply to all of them. But I'm gonna show you how quick and easy it is to check and see if your wheel bearings are still good. I'll also go ahead and show you how to replace this type of wheel bearing. This type of wheel bearing is not just on Chevrolets. Dodge also uses it. I'm not sure about Ford, but it's actually fairly simple to replace, so you might as well replace it yourself. Save some of that money and keep it in your pocket instead of having to pay the shop to do it for you. Now, a little backstory of this: about a month or so ago, I was driving this truck and the ABS light came on. I thought, okay, no big deal. It happens. There's a few different things I can check, but I never got around to doing that. I've got a few different vehicles that I drive, so I do not drive this one just necessarily every day. But then a couple weeks roll by and I get back in the truck and I take off and I see that light again. I thought, okay, forgot to check. Well, then I started hearing something and I thought, okay, I've had this truck since '08. So I've replaced a lot of different stuff on it. This truck's been a lot of places. I put a lot of miles on this truck. But as soon as I heard that sound, I thought, okay, that sounds like a wheel bearing, which would make sense why the ABS light's on. Because if that bearing gets wore out enough, that tone ring, or that sensor ring and sensor are in that bearing assembly. So if it's getting into that, that's probably where the ABS fault is actually coming from. So it's been a few weeks, finally got some time off work. I've got the truck in the shop and I need to get that bearing replaced in it. Now, checking these, you don't have to have a big lift like I've got here. You can do it in your driveway with a jack. If you use a jack, same with a lift, make sure you put some sort of support under the vehicle. Don't rely on that jack's 10-cent O-ring to hold it up and keep from crushing you. Use jack stands, that's what they're for. They'll keep you safe. On this lift, I still put jack stands. I've got some tall jack stands I put under the vehicle just to help support everything. So stick with me and I'll show you how quick and easy it is. So I do have a little quick tip for you. If you own your own lift and you're servicing most of your own vehicles, all of these lifts come with these rubber pads. Each one of these goes on each arm. It also comes with extenders. So you can need a tall one in the front or in the back, or a short one, vice versa, or no spacer at all. So something I do just to help me keep everything in order, because I go through a few vehicles. Let me show you. I have a little whiteboard wrote up over here, and it tells me what vehicle, what spacer requires on the front and rear of the lift. And that just helps speed things up for me. You can tell I haven't had the Chevy on the lift since I started doing this. So I got to remember what spacers it takes. So as far as checking your wheel bearing goes, once you get it up on a jack and jack stands, I've got jack stands under this vehicle up on the lift, you're gonna wanna grab the top and bottom of it and just kind of rock it back and forth. See if it'll rock. It shouldn't rock any. So if it does, wheel bearings will wear out. Or possibly could be your ball joints as well. But you could look on the inside while you rock it and see if there's any movement up in there. That's bad. So let's get that fixed. Let me show you what one that isn't bad looks like. Okay, we're here on the passenger side, and that one ain't got no movement in it. So we'll get the driver's side replaced, and then this thing should be as good as new. And this is what it's like when it's fixed. So the first step I'm gonna do is go ahead and get the tire and wheel off. Okay, the next step on this project is getting the brake caliper and brake caliper bracket off. You've got brake caliper bolts. You got one up here and one down at the bottom. Those are 18 millimeter, and then the bracket bolt right in here. See down here? It's caliper bolt, bracket bolt. Take both of them off. This will come off. I've got these little brake caliper hangers. We'll hook it in the caliper and just hang the caliper off to the side so it's out of the way. That's what the brake caliper bolt looks like. On removing the caliper, it helps quite a bit to use a little pry bar to help compress that piston in that caliper, and that caliper should slide right off. Once the brake caliper's off, go ahead and remove your brake pads. Now we can go ahead and take our 21 millimeter socket and get the bracket for the brake caliper off. Okay, bolts are out. There's your brake caliper bracket. Okay, once that's off, rotor should just slide right off. If it is stuck, you can kind of hit in between the studs. That'll help loosen it up. Okay, next step, this wire right here that runs up to the frame, we're gonna pop all these plastic clips out. That's your ABS wire. It'll have a plug right up here by your shock. Try not to break the plastic clips. Use a little flathead screwdriver or something to get up underneath it. Okay, it's unplugged. Okay, ABS wire's unhooked. Next step, if you have two-wheel drive, you can forego this. But next step, we'll have to get this big nut off. We'll tap on the end of this CV shaft with a dead blow just to loosen it up. Then we'll be able to unbolt the wheel bearing assembly and take it off. I don't have the exact correct size, but I've got a 1 3/8" socket. It's a little tight fitting on it, but it works. This will be a metric socket. Probably a 32, 34, somewhere in there. Take the nut off. Don't forget to take that washer off. Now we'll just whack on this with a dead blow and it should free it up just a little. I know last time I did this, I can show you, if you can see, but there is anti-seize up and around that. I always put anti-seize on stuff like this. You'll thank yourself later. Okay, that thing is, see how it's loose? Okay, last step of getting the wheel bearing assembly off is just 4 more bolts. So let me show you those. On this wheel bearing, this is the wheel bearing assembly right here. And there's 4 bolts, 1 up here, 1 down here, and 2 more in the same spot on the other side of the CV shaft. Your 3/4 tons and 1 tons all have a 4-bolt flange. Your half tons are a triangular shape and they'll be 3-bolt. This is a 15mm head. I'm gonna go ahead and get all these broke loose, get them taken out, and then this wheel bearing assembly and this shield here slide right off. I don't know how well you can see, but all this dust right up here, that sparkly dust, it's all metal. That's from that bearing going out on us. It was ready for a new one. That's what those bolts look like. Okay, well, the wheel bearing I went with, I bought a couple of them a few years ago. Only replaced one, but it is a Detroit axle. And the new assembly, that's what the new assembly looks like. Should look identical to the old one. So there's a part number for this one. I don't know if you can read it or not. DB axle 515058. So the only thing we need to do here is the ABS wire. I'll go ahead and put some anti-seize or grease up in the splines for that CV shaft, stick it up there with the shield that we took off, and start the bolts. And assembly will be identical to the way we took it apart. We'll put these 4 bolts in, torque them. Be sure and check your service manual or figure out what the torque specs are, but do torque all of these. Before I put the new wheel bearing on, like I said, huge fan of anti-seize. It looks like I didn't use anti-seize last time. Looks like I used just regular grease, but it worked. That grease is still in on some of this where it pushed out. I'll put it on these splines and I'll go ahead and put it on the splines inside the new bearing. All right, we got anti-seize on the CV shaft. We got anti-seize inside this. You want to make sure the ABS sensor is orientated up. We can toss that up out of the way. Stick this shield back over. The ABS wire has to go between that shield. Okay, now that that's on, slide it up on the CV shaft. And stick it up in the box. Make sure all our wires aren't getting pinched. Okay. Simple as that. Let me go ahead and get those 4 nuts started, put in and torque. Then we'll put the washer and nut. I'll go ahead and anti-seize this CV shaft also. Put that on, get it torqued, and then we'll start putting the brake caliper bracket and brake caliper back on. Anti-seize is your friend, use it. Sure gonna make your life a lot easier when you go to do some of this stuff. Okay, the CV nut, I will torque it once we get everything put together and get it on the ground where I can set the brake. It'll torque to, I believe, right around 177 foot-pounds, somewhere in there. Next thing we need to do is get the brake rotor installed, and then we can get the brake caliper bracket installed. I'm gonna go ahead and put a little anti-seize around this flange since I seem to anti-seize everything. I guess all the years of working on this stuff all the time really made me appreciate it when somebody do that, because you could tell when someone didn't. Okay, I looked, it looks like it's 221 foot-pounds for the 2 bolts that hold the brake caliper bracket on. All right, now we need to put our brake pads back on. If you need to replace your brake pads, now's the time to do it. There's still a lot of life left in these. They don't look bad. Okay, now the brake pads are installed. We'll go ahead and get our caliper put back on. And the caliper bolts. All right, guys, this job's almost done. Last step before we put the wheel on is reroute the ABS cable, put all the little plastic clips back where they go in the frame and plug it in up there by the shock. Once that's done, we'll get the tire on. I'll pull the center cap, torque this nut, and put the center cap back on. We'll be done. Okay, that's on. Brand new studs. Those come in place with the wheel bearing. Just we'll put a little anti-seize on those as well. Okay guys, that literally took me an hour to do. The part cost $100 here where I'm at in 2024 at my location. The job really isn't that hard. If you took this vehicle to the shop and had them do it, it's gonna cost you at least $500. So a $100 part and an hour of my time, and I saved at least $400 out of the deal, that's a win in my book. Hopefully somebody out there found the information helpful and useful enough that they can do this job or feel like they can do this job themselves. But if you would, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.